Welcome to episode 3 of Beyond the A-League. I'm your host, Aaron Beggs. With plenty to talk about, let's get straight into the action. What a first round of the 2025 competition from the New South Wales NPL, with plenty of goals and cards that led to some thrilling games from the premier men's competition in the state. Now, with no further ado, let's get on with it, starting with the game on Friday night. On Friday night, we see Manly United take on Central Coast Mariners Academy at Cromer Park, and it was the home side that absolutely dismantled the Central Coast Seconds team, with Manly winning 5-0 to get their season underway with a resounding victory. With Taiga Kawano, hopefully I just butchered that name, getting the scoring underway in the 12th minute, the Mariners managed to get to the halftime break only with the one goal conceded. It was looking like they could come back into the game after halftime, but United had second thoughts on that one, with Manly running riot against the Central Coast Mariners Academy team, with Aaron O'Driscoll getting a goal, and that was followed by Lucas Meek getting a brace. And to finish off the scoring, substitute Farah Coco getting the fifth. So a resounding victory to start the season for Manly United, and as for the Mariners, things can only look up. Moving on to Saturday's games, we had the Western Sydney Wanderers second team taking on the newcomers, the Mount Druitt Town Rangers, in what was a somewhat entertaining game. Not as many goals as the game on Friday night, but still entertaining nonetheless. The game ended in a 1-1 draw, with the Wanderers taking the lead in the 41st minute from a Meliwenthu Nkomo goal, but it was the newcomers that got the equaliser through Joseph Gibbs, and truth be told, they could have went on to win the game, but eventually couldn't get it done. But not a bad hit out for the new boys there. We move on to the next game on Saturday, which saw Sydney Olympic taking on one of the St George teams, St George FC. This game was a good back and forth game here, and anyone could have won it, but it was the St George team that took the early lead with a Jaden Casella goal in the 4th minute. But that was cancelled out only 2 minutes later when Seth Clark scored in the 6th minute for Olympic. You could have been mistaken thinking that this game was going to be scoring masterclass, but alas, it was not to be, with the goals drying up at the break to take us to half-time at 1-1. On the other side of the break, Adam Parkhouse got what turned out to be the winner in the 66th minute, and that's where it ended, with Olympic with a 2-1 win. Sydney United took on Sutherland Sharks in an exciting game played at Denzel Park, with the Sharks taking the early lead from a Sydney United own goal scored by Adrian Vlastelica in the 15th minute. They then doubled their lead in the second half through a Daniel Wong goal, but after that, that's where the Sharks' day turned from a dream to a nightmare, because in the space of 4 minutes, they went from having their first 3 points of the season to having to share the points with United. In the 87th minute, Michael Glassock got the scoring underway for United, and that was quickly followed up by Mason Wells with an injury time goal to end the game 2-2. We move on to what was another cracker of a game, and that was the NWS Spirit taking on the Sydney FC. This game saw the Spirit take an early lead in the 3rd minute from a Michael Cohn-Stab goal. The Spirit must have thought that all their dreams had come true, but as we've seen in the A-League this year, you can't write Sydney FC off, and it seems that it's the same for the NPL team. As just on the brink of half-time, they equalised through Alan Harvus in the 42nd minute, and again on the stroke of half-time in the 45th from Matthias McAllister, making it 2-1 to Sydney at half-time. Back from half-time, and it was the Spirit again that got off to a flying start, with Takumi Ofika scoring in the 48th minute, making it 2-2. That's where the scoring stopped for the game, up until the 91st minute when Yu Akubu Okubo got the winner for the Spirit in the 91st minute, making it a 3-2 win there for the Spirit. As we move on to the other games that rounded out round one of the competition this weekend, let's move to the champions from 2024, and that was Rockdale Illidan FC. They took on the other St George team, St George City, and it was the visitors that took the early lead in this one with a 9th minute Mark McNulty penalty. They doubled their lead after half-time through Chow de Godo, but it was the champions that never gave up in this one, and they got one back through Alek Jurasevsky to make it 1-2 with 30 minutes to go. With plenty of back and forth action, it was Rockdale that got the equaliser in the 86th minute with James Nikolovsky making it 2-2, and that's where it finished for both teams, walking away with a draw to start their seasons. A 6-goal thriller saw the points shared at the home of Apia Leichhardt as Wollongong Wolves came back from a 3-1 down to grab a 3-3 draw, with both teams trying to open the scoring. It was Apia that took the lead from Jack Stewart penalty in the 15th minute. It wasn't long before the referee pointed to the spot again, this time in favour of the Wolves, and the captain stepped up and didn't miss making the scoreline 1-1 at half-time. Coming out of the break, it was Apia that came out firing and took the lead through a thunderbolt goal from Jordan Segreto in the 54th minute. They soon followed that up with a Dreden Kelly goal in the 76th. But it was the Wolves, that team from Wollongong, that never gave up, and only 1 minute after Apia got their third goal, it was Sebastian Hernandez that got the Wolves back into the game with a 73rd minute goal. And 3 minutes later, in the 75th minute, it was the referee again pointing to the spot and Nicholas Olsen holding onto his nerves and converting the penalty to put the Wolves equal at 3-3. And that's where the game finished. And in the final match of the round, and it was my match of the round for round one, the reigning NPL New South Wales champions got their season off with a draw in their round one clash against Blacktown City at Marconi Stadium on Saturday night. The game started well for the champions as captain Marko Jesic got the opener in the 3rd minute, with the game going backward and forward with both teams having chances in the remainder of the first half. It wasn't until the 80th minute when the game got interesting, with Jared McKinley getting sent off for, and I will say it, an absolute sending off with a last man tackle on the Marconi attacking player. That's when both teams opened up and created multiple chances, but in the end it was Blacktown City that never gave up, and well into injury time at the back end of the game, they got what they deserved, and Jacob Kresner got the 95th minute equaliser to send the visitors home with a deserved draw. It was a heartbreaker for the home side, as they really should have seen this game out. But as they say, it's not over till the whistle blows. Overall, this first week of the NPL New South Wales competition didn't disappoint, with plenty of goals and action between all the games. As for my picks, well, as for my picks from last week, I chose, if you will recall, they were Manly United, Mount Druitt, Sutherland, Sydney Olympic, Sydney FC, Apia, Marconi and Rockdale. Unfortunately, I only got 2 wins out of those ones. And as I said, my picks mean absolutely nothing. If we look forward to round 2 coming up this weekend, we have on Friday the 14th of February, we have Manly United versus Sutherland Sharks at Cromer Park. Wollongong Wolves play at home at Wynn Stadium against St George City. St George FC play at Rockdale at Barton Park. On Saturday, we have Mount Druitt Town Rangers playing a home game against Marconi Stallions at Popondetta Park. Sydney Olympic play Western Sydney Wanderers at Belmore Sports Ground. Blacktown City play the Spirit at Landon Stadium. And on Sunday, we have 2 games to round out round 2, and that is Sydney FC versus Sydney United, at Rockdale Illingdon Sports Ground, and the Central Coast Mariners versus RPA Leichhardt at Plume Park. As for my useless picks for round 2, they are Manly United, Wollongong Wolves, Rockdale, Marconi, Sydney Olympic, Blacktown City, Sydney United and RPA Leichhardt. So, on to the second part of this episode, I am going to continue my look at the history of some of Australian football clubs. This week I'm going to have a look at the history of Sydney Olympic. So if you'd like, feel free to join me after the break where I detail a somewhat brief history of the Sydney Olympic Football Club. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode 3 of Beyond the A-League. Now, as I stated last week, I'm going to look back at the historical football clubs in Australia, and we started last week with Marconi. This week, I'm going to have a look at Sydney Olympic, and I think I'm going to do it by NPL competitions. So this episode here is about the NPL New South Wales competition. I'm going to do one about the first round for the NPL Victoria, which will probably come out tomorrow, and so on and so on. So every time I bring up an episode or do an episode of the results, I'm going to do a history of one of those clubs. So I'm pretty sure I've got Melbourne Knights coming up, and I've got Adelaide City, I've got Olympic Kingsway over here in Perth, I'll have Lions FC in Queensland, and Adamstown Rosebuds from northern New South Wales, and South Hobart from Tasmania, and Canberra, one of the Canberra teams, ACT Capital NPL Capital teams, when those seasons start. So as I said, tomorrow's episode will be NPL Victoria, and I'll have Melbourne Knights. But this week, for the New South Wales NPL one, I'm going to do a brief history of Sydney Olympic. Sydney Olympic Football Club is one of Australia's most storied football institutions. It was founded in 1957 by Greek immigrants who sought to establish a club that reflected their heritage and passion for the game. Originally named Pan-Hellenic Soccer Club, it quickly became a hub for Greek Australians and a crucial part of the growing football scene in Sydney. The club played its early years in the New South Wales State League, steadily gaining a reputation for its technical prowess and dedicated following. By the late 1960s, Pan-Hellenic had emerged as a dominant force in the state competitions, winning titles and nurturing talented players who would go on to represent both club and country. In 1977, Australian football underwent a major transformation with the establishment of the National Soccer League, the NSL, the country's first national football competition. Sydney Olympic was one of the foundation clubs of the NSL, signifying its elevation to the top tier of Australian football. In the early NSL years, the club experienced fluctuating fortunes but maintained its strong Greek Australian support base. In 1978, the club rebranded as Sydney Olympic, a name that retained its cultural roots while appealing to a broader audience. During the 1980s, the club steadily improved, regularly competing for top positions in the league and developing players who would contribute to Australian football's growth. The 1990s marked a golden era for Sydney Olympic, with the club establishing itself as a powerhouse in Australian football. In 1990, under coach Eddie Krincevich, Sydney Olympic won its first NSL championship, defeating Marconi Fairfield in a thrilling grand final. This victory cemented the club's status as one of the country's elite teams. Throughout the decade, Sydney Olympic continued to challenge for silverware. The club reached the NSL Grand Final multiple times, consistently finishing among the league's best teams. Star players such as Abbas Saad, Peter Katholos and Paul Ocon become household names, contributing to both Sydney Olympic's success and the development of Australian football. The club's second NSL championship came in 2001 when it defeated Perth Glory 3-1 in front of a passionate crowd at Parramatta Stadium. Coached by Branko Kalina, the team featured standout performances from players like Ante Milicic and Pablo Cardozo. This triumph marked the pinnacle of Sydney Olympic's NSL journey. With the dissolution of the NSL in 2004 and the introduction of the A-League in 2005, Sydney Olympic found itself excluded from the new competition. This marked a significant shift for the club, which had to return to the New South Wales State League, later now known as the New South Wales Premier League, or NPL New South Wales. Despite this setback, Sydney Olympic remained resilient. The club continued to compete at the highest state level, winning multiple NPL New South Wales championships and maintaining a strong youth development program. In 2018, the club secured another NPL New South Wales title, demonstrating its enduring strength in Australian football. Sydney Olympic has played a crucial role in Australian football's multicultural evolution. Initially a club for Greek migrants, it has since embraced a diverse array of players and supporters. The club's contributions to the national team have been significant, with numerous former Sydney Olympic players representing the Socceroos. Moreover, the club's passionate fan base has remained one of the most dedicated in Australian football, ensuring that Sydney Olympic's legacy continues. With ambitious plans for future development, including potential participation in a national second division, Sydney Olympic remains a vital part of Australian football history. Sydney Olympic's journey from its Greek immigrant roots to national success and beyond embodies the evolution of Australian football. While the professional football landscape has changed over the decades, Sydney Olympic's commitment to excellence, youth development and community engagement ensures that it remains an integral part of the sport. The club's legacy as a trailblazer in Australian football is secure, and its future continues to hold promise. So there we go. That's the show for the New South Wales NPL. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, then hit the subscribe button and leave us a comment. I'll be back later on in the week with a show reviewing the first round of NPL Victoria and preview of round 2, as well as a look at the Melbourne Knights Football Club. I'll also have a show looking at the NPLW Night Series round 3 review, as well as look ahead to the first round of the Northern New South Wales NPL, which starts this weekend. As always, be kind to each other. See you next time on Beyond the A-League.